206. Look at verse. There is a. We'll just do some Parsha highlights over here on Parsha Vayeishev. I'm sure I'm not going to steal anything Rabbi Horowitz or the Biala Rebbe are going to say. Just some Parsha highlights over here. There's a glaring problem in the Psukim here. We'll just start off with. We're going to start in the middle. Maybe we'll get back to the beginning if we have time, or don't have time, or run out of time. Pasuk says as follows. It's verse 36, the last verse on page 207. If you're following along in the English, which I am, it says, "Now the Medanites, the Medanim, sold him to Egypt to Potiphar, who is the Sar HaTabachim, who is the chief butcher." So it sounds very clear in this pasuk. It's very obvious from this pasuk that the Medanites, the Medanites, are the ones who sold Yosef as a slave to Potiphar. Right? Yosef was the victim of his brother's plot. He was thrown into a pit. Then he was pulled out of the pit and sold as a slave. He sold as a slave, and the Medanim sell him to Potiphar, who's a very honorable guy in Mitzrayim. The Medanim sell him to Potiphar. That's very clear from this pasuk. If you turn a few pages, to the beginning of chapter 39, to page 213 in the English, it says, if you want, you can follow along. If you don't, it's on the table. It says, and if you look at chapter 39, verse 1, it says, "And Yosef had been brought down to Egypt. Potiphar, a courtier of Paro, the chamberlain of the butchers, a prominent Egyptian, purchased him from the Ishmaelites, who had brought him down there." So, a very glaring problem. 5 pages ago, we're told, 6 pages ago, we were told that the Medanim sold Yosef to Potiphar, and 6 pages later, we're told that the Yishmaelim, the Arabs, are the ones who sold Yosef to Potiphar.
When they were going to sell him, didn't they say check him the Ishmaelites? Yeah. So that means
there is a further complication over here. There is a further complication over here because it says, if you go back to 205, there is a further complication. If you go back to page 205, if you go to verse 28, it says Midianite men, verse 28, just reading in the English to make it easy. Midianite men, traders, passed by, and they drew Yosef up, lifted him out of the pit, and sold Yosef to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver.
Then they brought Yosef to Egypt.
So it sounds like from that verse, it would sound like the Ishmaelites were the ones who brought him down to Egypt.
Right.
So what's going?
It could be the Midianites man in the beginning of the pasuk is referring to.
Well, it sounds like the Midianim took him out of the pit. The Midianite men passed. They drew Yosef up and lifted him out of the pit, and they sold Yosef. It sounds like the Midianites sold him to the Ishmaelites,
right? For
20 pieces of silver.
Then they brought us to Egypt. They could be the Midianites, could be the Ishmaelites.
Okay,
you're right. It implies the Ishmaelites.
Implies the Ishmaelites, and then later we're told the Midianites sold them, and then later we're told the Ishmaelites sold them. So what's going on over here? So one of the Mefarshim say, this is all of my notes from past years. One of the Mefarshim explained that maybe the question is more exciting than the answer, but to provide a resolution, one of the Mefarshim explained was that when Yosef was being sold on the slave market, it looked very suspicious, especially to have Arabs selling Yosef. Yosef was this very handsome-looking man, didn't look like your average slave. So when Potiphar is negotiating this deal and he's trying to buy Yosef as a slave, so he's thinking, where did you get this guy from? Doesn't look like your average slave. Did you really buy him as a slave? So the Ishmaelites said, yeah, we bought him as a slave. They said, prove it. Prove that you bought him as a slave. So they went and they brought down the Midianites, who they had purchased Yosef from the Midianites. The Arabs had purchased Yosef from the Midianites. They brought the Midianites down to Mitzrayim to act as guarantors on the sale, to testify that indeed Yosef was a slave and he was being sold legitimately. So that's sort of how they square these two things, that it really was both. Both the Ishmaelites and the Midianim, they were both involved in the sale.
And for sure you can't be both a Midianite and an Ishmaelite.
At the same time. Right, we're assuming that.
Did they sell them back and
like
forth, maybe?
the Armenians that come from Lebanon. Or
They're also the Armenians and the
There's no
Lebanese.
such thing, right?
I don't think so. But it sounds like they sold it to the other. If on 205, that's what it sounds like. That's what he said.
They had been
205.
sold to a different group.
Yeah, Midianite men passed by,
There were different people.
and they
all
lifted
along.
and they sold them to the Ishmaelites.
So according, what you just said is the brothers sold him to the Ishmaelites,
No.
Hmm.
and then they sold him to the Midianites.
No, the brothers sold them to the Midianim.
But the Torah says they sold him to the Ishmaelites.
No, they only
No, it says the Midianites took him out of the bore.
Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites.
If you look at
Okay.
if you look at
They weren't
if
there.
you look
Who
at
sold
205,
Yosef? Did the brothers sell Yosef or
To-
not?
it's machlokas. But if you look at if you look at 205 and 28, it says Midianite men sold him to the Ishmaelites.
But the previous passage says, "Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, but let our hand not be upon him, for he's our brother, our own flesh." His brothers agreed.
That's just an idea. Come, let us sell it to the Ishmaelites. That's just what they thought they were going to do. That doesn't mean they did it. The Midianites took him out of the pit, and they sold him to the Midianites.
Ishmaelites.
No.
Rashi says like you, but
Okay.
right. But there's other right.
Okay. Wait, so what you just said is
Okay.
the brothers wanted to sell him to the Ishmaelites, but they didn't. Instead, the Midianites took him out of the pit
And
and
sold
they
him
sold
to the Ishmaelites. Correct.
The Ishmaelites brought
That
him
is
to
what the
Egypt.
Rashbam says.
Okay, and then the Ishmaelites brought him to Egypt, and the Ishmaelites sold him to Potiphar, but Potiphar got suspicious, and so
He
they
brought
brought the Midianites
Right.
as a guarantors that they had indeed bought Joseph from the Midianites,
You
and
got
he
it.
really belongs to them, and so then Potiphar
You
bought
got
him
it.
from the Ishmaelites.
Right.
Got it.
Right.
You said the
Okay.
Rashbam says this.
Yes.
Okay.
The Rashbam says the first part that the Midianim were the one who sold them to the
Who
Ishmaelites.
says the second part?
I don't know.
Okay.
I have it written down. I don't remember who said it. Okay. Moving right along in the psukim over here. Moving right along in the psukim. So, Yosef is sold as a slave down to Potiphar,
Uh-huh.
and very quickly he gets himself into one of the most difficult tests, one of the most difficult nisyonos that anyone in the Chumash has ever faced, where
He gets a shoshel.
Mrs. Potiphar, right? Mrs. Potiphar becomes very attracted to Yosef, and
Mrs. Robinson.
the Midrashim talk actually at length. The Midrashim talk at length about just how attractive Yosef was. Yosef, again, you have to realize Yosef is 17 years old. He, as far as he knows, he's been completely forgotten by his family. He's been sold as a slave. His father isn't coming to get him. He doesn't know that he's ever going to make it anywhere. He doesn't know what's going to become of himself. He's 17 years old. He's the most eligible bachelor in Mitzrayim. The Midrashim talk that the non-Jewish ladies were so busy staring at Yosef they would cut themselves when they were, working in the kitchen.
Yeah.
They would be so busy ogling him that they would cut themselves and they wouldn't even notice the pain. So he
I
was
get-
this,
I get that a lot.
he was the center of attention, and he's there on his own. He's not a married man, and Mrs. Potiphar is after him, and he's withstanding this nisayon. There's a few interesting points over here. One is
How old was he when he was sold, by the way?
17.
And so this is before all the jail? This is
Correct. This is before he got thrown in jail because of Mrs. Potiphar's
He was
accusations.
bought by Colonel Potiphar at the slave market, whatever. it is.
Correct.
I see.
So if you look at over here, it says in verse 9, we're on page 215 now. If you look in verse 9, he says, "And there is no one greater in this house than I. And he has denied me nothing but you, since you are his wife. How can I perpetrate this great evil and have sinned against God?" Now the word over there, I have sinned against God, is v'chatasi le'elokim. I have sinned against God.
Yeah.
And I will have sinned against God. How can I do this and I will have sinned against God? So I saw an interesting point over here is that, why does he say, I'll have sinned? He says, how can I do this terrible thing? You're a married woman. You belong to Potiphar. How can I do this terrible thing and I'll have sinned to Hashem? So the question is,
What's the
the question
question?
is like this. He should have said, and we would have sinned to Hashem.
Oh.
She may not be Jewish. She may not be one of Yaakov's children, but even non-Jews
But why
are
would he-
prohibited
why would-
in
why would
adultery.
Why would he include her?
It's also a sin. It's not only a sin for him.
No. I understand.
It's also a sin for her.
It's such an inner, reflecting kind of internal view on himself.
He,
And the
he
minute
is speaking to
says
her.
we, kind of assumes
Then he assumes
a
that they have a
relationship.
partnership.
So this is what Zaidi was saying, is that he so wanted to divorce himself from her. He so wanted to have no connection to her. He didn't want to include himself with her even in one sentence. Didn't even want to mention himself and Mrs. Potiphar in one sentence.
And
moving just along a little bit over here, it says, going on to the next page, the top verse, it says, verse 12, it says, she caught hold of him by his garment, saying, lie with me. Vatispaseo b'bigdo, lemor shichva imi. She grabbed him by his jacket, lemor saying, shichva imi. So there's two... There's two problems here with the verses. We skipped over the very intense part. There's two problems here. First of all, the word lamor is out of place. The word lamor means to say, saying. It should have said, she grabbed his garment and she said, lie with me.
So what is
It
this?
should have said
It should have said vatomar. It should have said vatisbaseu bebigdo. She grabbed him by his coat, his jacket, and it said vatomar shichva imi. And then she said, lie with me. What does it mean? She grabbed him by his coat, saying,
Oh, you mean
lie with me.
Past tense with the present tense?
no. There's two ways you could have said it. Could have said, she grabbed him by his baghead, and she said, lie with me, which is not how the Pasuk said it.
That's okay.
The Pasuk says it, she grabbed him by his jacket, saying, or to say, lie with me.
Saying.
So what does it mean, saying? Why does he use the word lamor?
Present tense.
The
It
action
is.
was suggestive of her intent.
So it could be, one way of saying it is maybe she didn't really say it at all. But her action was, that was the implication of her action. That would be one way. But there's another problem with the Pasuk. It says, shichva imi. The shichva is
feminine.
Usually the word the hey at the end of the word shichva would imply that you're speaking to a woman.
Right.
If you want to tell a man, if you're speaking to a man and you're saying lie with me, you would say shochev imi. You would leave out the hey. When you're speaking to a woman, you say shichva imi. So but this is Mrs. Potiphar speaking, and she's talking to Yosef. So why is she speaking to Yosef and saying shichva imi? Yosef's not a woman. Yosef's a man. He's a very attractive man, but he's still a man.
So maybe it's saying the
everybody
opposite.
or
That maybe that's
yeah, it was me. But I mean, it's all
fires.
iPhones.
Uh-oh.
Oh, the iPhones.
What's going on?
What is
Fire
it?
alarm?
Smoke advisory.
No, I'm sure it's enough.
Strong winds.
Strong winds.
Yeah.
Bad news for my hedge, which is already hanging.
Oh boy.
So
So-
could
Pulling
it be
the wall
that
down.
it's Yosef that is saying these words?
Oh,
No,
so
his wife.
So it's again the simple shot. It sounds like Mrs. Potiphar is saying it, but the shot I heard was like this: Vatit b'sei with big dough. She grabbed him by his jacket. She said to him, "Lamor, you say." She told Yosef, "You say shichva imi. You say to me, lie with me." Shichva imi is talking to a woman. She's telling Yosef, "I want you to say these words. You don't have to. You don't actually. Don't do anything. At least say this." She wanted him to at least say it, and even that he wouldn't do.
Wow.
Even that he wouldn't do. He wouldn't even say it.
I don't like that. Who said
You're
that?
gonna say him.
Again, I've heard these are things I've heard over the years. I don't have any sources for you. I apologize. Short notice. Another thing over here, another point over here is going back. I'm not going in order over here. I apologize. It says back to 215. Just flipping back one page. It says in verse 7. Really, the Hebrew helps you over here. It says, "Vahi achar dvarim ha'eleh." It was after these things.
2:14.
2:14, 2:15, depending where you are. Verse 7 or verse 9, depending where you are. It says, "Vahi achar dvarim ha'eleh." It was after these things. So that's also interesting. What does it mean? What's it referring to? It says it was after these things, and his master's wife started gazing at him, and she said, "Shichva imi." Same problem over there. Don't have the same answer. Okay.
That's a good indication.
So what happened? What had happened? What just happened that all of a sudden Mrs. Potiphar is becoming interested in Yosef? What's happening over here? So if you what just happened? It says after these. It was after these things. I'm just getting a little sidetracked. It was after these things, and all of a sudden Mrs. Potiphar starts looking at Yosef. What just happened? So if you look, the last
Preened a
thing,
little too much.
the last what's that?
He preened
Right.
too much.
The last thing, if you look at the pasuk, the last thing it says, "Vayihi Yosef yefei toar v'yefei mara." He was attractive, meaning he was, and the commentators explain over here. What did I write down?
In the previous verse, verse
Hold
6,
on.
and then verse 6. And Yosef was handsome of form and handsome of appearance.
Okay, so he has a lot of midrashim on his.
Because it says over
and
here.
all that stuff.
What happened over here?
Na'ar, I think, is because that word na'ar somewhere.
Two things over here. Rashi explains that what the criticism against him was two things. One, there was a criticism against him that you're down here in Mitzrayim. Your father is sitting in Eretz Yisrael. He's mourning you as if you're dead, and you're starting to feel comfortable. You're starting to worry about your appearance and to groom yourself, and you're all comfortable. I'm going to make it trouble for you. That's what Rashi says.
But just quick question here. It says
Yes.
the fact that he
Funny
was
thing
handsome of form and handsome of appearance, is that putting an emphasis on the appearance, like that he's doing that for himself, to himself?
Correct.
He's making himself.
Correct.
Yeah, that's
I can't find where I wrote it down over here.
That's what Rashi
But another
says.
shot was that as long as he kept to himself, and as long as he wasn't overly concerned with his own appearance, there was a malach that was protecting him. A malach was protecting him that no one should notice his appearance. But as soon as he started giving his own attention to it and showing off his own appearance, so he didn't have the protection anymore. And that's why Mrs. Potiphar was able to lay her eyes on him.
Wow.
Now it says over here, it says Vayima'in. It says the first, Vayima'in Vayomer. The verse here is very interesting. First of all, there's a shalshelis. The way the Baal Kori says is, Vayima'in means he refused. The way they read it is Vayima'in. So it's like a very strong.
100% sure.
Well, that's you could read it that way, or you could read it as a very strong refusal.
Oh,
It says he's refused, and he said to her, it's not right. Potiphar put me in charge of everything, and you're his wife, and I have everything else, and so on. And then he gives her a whole story. He gives her a whole story why it's wrong. But the first thing it says is he refused, and then he starts explaining to her why it's wrong because he made me in charge, and he gave me a good job, and you're his wife, and you're the only thing I don't have access to, and he starts giving a whole explanation of why they can't do it. And it's a sin to Hashem. Yeah.
Rabbi Bess told his congregation that everybody's up in arms over the indiscretions now, and the problem that they have is not the fact that it's such a no morality, it's that they're infringing on other people's rights. In other words, they're taking the wrong issue. They're not shocked at the lack of morality. They're shocked that they
Infringing on someone else's
other people's
rights.
So the same way here, they're not. He's giving a lot of reasons why he couldn't, but he's not saying it's just plain wrong.
Eventually, he says "V'chatasi le'elokim," but he does say it. He does say it eventually. But I guess he's trying to reason with her. But the point that I was brought out was that the first thing he does is he refuses. The first thing is to just say no. Then you can start explaining why it's wrong. But the first thing is you have to just know. It's a paradigm for whenever a person has a challenge, whenever a person is confronted with a temptation to sin or whatever it is. First thing you say is no. I'm not. First thing is I'm not doing it. Okay, now I can convince myself why I shouldn't do it. But the first thing is you just have to know. You just refuse. You just refuse. Then okay. Then you could talk about why not. And the level of Nisayon here. It says even after Yosef was in jail, ultimately he went to jail for the whole thing. You can imagine what this looked like. Here he was. He stands up in the biggest Nisayon of us anybody can imagine. And what's the result? That he didn't live with her. But what's the result? She goes to Mr. Potiphar and says, this guy that you hired to be head of your household tried to live with me, and he gets thrown in jail. So you can imagine what this whole thing looks like. And the Mefarshim explain, maybe it's Midrashim, they explain even after he was in jail, the jail was in Potiphar's house. Right. By the way, if you notice this, it's
yes.
The jail was in Potiphar's house. Huh. Where does that say that in the Psukim?
Hey, later, it says.
Hold on a second.
It says in Pasuk Gimel, Perak Mem.
Yes.
Bet Sar HaTabachim El Bet HaSoar Mekom HaYosef.
Yeah. If you look at 2:19 or 2:18, depending on what language you're using, it says in verse 3 or Pasuk Gimel, it says he placed them in the ward of the house of the chamberlain of the butchers into the prison, the place where Joseph was confined. Right. The chamberlain of the butchers is Potiphar. Right. The chamberlain of the butchers, he's still in Potiphar's house. So Midrashim say that he was still being brought. He was asleep in the jail, but during the day he was still being brought into Potiphar's house to work. And Mrs. Potiphar was still giving him tsaras, was still making problems for him, even after he got thrown into jail for the whole escapade.
For 10 years?
For the whole
12 years?
Yeah, the whole time he was in jail, and he would attempt to look away from her, and he made her wear some. He made her, Mrs. Potiphar. He was always trying to look down, so he shouldn't see Mrs. Potiphar. Mrs. Potiphar made him wear a jacket that had a spike on it, so he couldn't look down, and he would still look down, and he would be bleeding. He would injure himself to look down, even with this spike.
You just lost Sam.
Just lost him. Too gory for him.
No, it's too gory. To me, this is just like stories you tell to your children when they go to sleep.
Hard to believe. Okay, well, when he hears it the third or the fourth time. Okay. Okay, when you hear it the third or the fourth time. Anyway, the point is, it's hard to believe. It's hard to believe that somebody 17 years old was able to go through all of this. Jail, sitting in jail, and and putting up with her for another 10 years. So where did he get, and where does it come from?
It's an immense level of self-control.
Right.
Where did he gain that?
Where did he get it from? So it says, where does it say? I think Rashi brings it down, that when he was confronted by Mrs. Potiphar, and he was tempted to sin.
It's in the
What does
commentary.
Rashi bring it down about Dumas Diukno Shalaviv?
Yeah, Rav Shmuel. 2:14.
Yeah, so the Gemara goes through over here. It says, he came into the house, no one was there. The backstory was that it was some major holiday, and the whole family, Mr. Potiphar and everybody else, and everyone in the house, they were all at wherever they were, the house of worship. They were all at the house of worship. It was December 25th or whatever it was. She was the only one home, and Yosef comes there, and obviously it was an opportune time for her to make her move. So it says what happened was to Yosef. What happened to Yosef? What helped him in that moment was that he saw an image of his father above him. What did his father tell
In the
him?
window, the Gemara says.
In the window? Doesn't do it. I shouldn't do it. It's the Gemara in Sota. The Gemara in Sota, which everybody here learned Sota, right?
I did.
They're all part of Rabbi Horowitz's Once Upon a Time. So it says over there, he saw the image of his father, and his father told him, he says, if you live with Mrs. Potiphar, you know what's going to happen to you. He says, your name, when they were going to build them, now this is, you're fast forwarding hundreds of years, after the servitude in Egypt, and after they leave Egypt, and after they receive the Torah, they build the Mishkan. In the Mishkan, there's going to be a high priest. The high priest wears a breastplate. The breastplate has 12 stones, and each one of the stones has a name of one of the Shvatim, has a name of one of the 12 tribes. Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, Yisachar, Zvulun, Dan, Naphtali, Gad, Asher, Yosef, and Yamin. So they're all there. So Yaakov is standing there above, or his image is above Yosef, and he says to Yosef, if you do this, your name's not going to be on the breastplate. That breastplate, that choshen that the Kohen Gadol is going to wear, your name's not going to be there. So the point is, it sounds like a very interesting thing to say. I could think of 100 better arguments. Like, if you do this, it's like, what's one of the 3 cardinal sins, and like, what are you doing? She's a married woman. There's a million. Like, what do you have to go to?
Name on the
300 years into the future to the high priest? So I heard last week or 2 weeks ago, I heard from Rabbi Daniel Kalish, or the name of Rabbi Daniel Kalish. He's a Rebbe in Waterbury, Connecticut. So he explained that you can't fight. Person has a desire for sin, so you can't fight the desire. The desire's there; it's a real thing. Lust is a real force that exists within people. You can't just say no. There's no such thing. You can't deny that it's there. I said it's related ideas like in last week's Parsha Vayeishev, where Yaakov is struggling with Esav's malach. And he asks the malach, "What's your name?" And he says, "Why you?" His answer is, "Why are you asking my name?" Now, Esav's malach represents, evil, the Satan, whatever you name it. So it is. What he was answering him was, "I don't want you to acknowledge that I'm there. I don't want you to acknowledge that the evil inclination doesn't want us to acknowledge his presence." He said they did a study of people who were dieting, and they found that the people who were tempted to eat a piece of cake or whatever it was, or to infringe on whatever the things were, people who admitted to themselves that they really wanted to eat that piece of cake, they were more successful dieters than the people who denied the fact that they wanted to eat it. People who felt like, no, I could go. The people who said to themselves, no, I don't need it. I'm not interested in eating that cookie. Those people were less successful than the people who said, I would really like a cookie right now, but I just can't have it. Those people were actually more successful. The people who acknowledged the desire to binge or whatever it was, to break the limits. People who acknowledged the desire and said, okay, I have that desire, but I'm going to work with it. Those people were more successful than the people who just said, I don't need it. I'm going to break my diet for this cookie. Those people were less successful.
So what is the connection?
So what's the connection to Yosef? Was that so Yaakov understood, or Yaakov's presence understood, that to fight it head on and to deny the Yetzer Hara and to say no, don't have the Yetzer Hara is not successful. Yeah, the Yetzer Hara is there. You got to deal with it. You have to find an approach. So his approach was, you're better than that. His approach was better than that. Your name is, there's going to be a high priest, and he's going to perform the service in the tabernacle, and he's going to go into the Holy of Holies, and your name's going to be there. you're going to miss out on that. When
Sure, but Yosef is more than just one of the 12. He's one of the four. He's one of the. He takes a much stronger position than just a numerical number. He's on the
Merkava.
throne, yeah.
Okay, right. Okay,
Yaakov is, not
could have gone a little further. Not Yosef. This is the Ushpisa. He makes it to the Ushpisa.
Right.
But
Even further than that, regarding the cake.
yeah,
Yeah, but it's a 17-year-old boy, and so his image of his father, spirit, whatever.
Actually, at the time he was 18 already.
18 already. Thank you.
he was there for a year.
Still, I mean, not that
Young-
much
a young
different. Yeah, young man. I mean, full of hormones and everything. So his father presents him this something in the future, something very virtual, something basically a stimulus, which is how can he defeat the evil inclination by visualizing for a boy something in the future, something not visible. That's my dilemma.
Okay, I hear that. I mean, you have to realize he might have been 18, but you realize he already learned all the Torah that Yaakov learned in 14 years in the yeshiva of Shem Ve'ever. He already gave over to Yosef. Yosef was a pretty accomplished person at that point, so he could understand these types of things. But the idea was
understand the value.
speak to a person by telling him how great he is. Don't speak to a person by trying to deny his own innate desires. You can tell a person doesn't have a desire. He does have a desire, but to tell a person he's bigger than the sin, so that was a more effective.
And the second quick question.
Yes.
Maybe Miss what's his,
Potiphar.
yeah.
Potiphar.
This is
She wasn't
Potiphar.
that good-looking woman.
Maybe she wasn't that good looking.
Yeah, I mean
that is an interesting point. I think I'm not sure if they talk about her appearance or not. I feel like
I never
it's
seen
talked
a
about that she
description
was.
of her appearance.
I thought she was extremely.
Yeah, I always heard
really?
it as she was
Yeah.
very attractive.
I mean, wasn't there a comparison to her and her daughter, or was it?
Yeah,
He was
I mean,
destined
Yosef
to-
ended up marrying her daughter.
Ah.
Yeah, Yosef ended up marrying her daughter.
That's your Mrs. Robinson.
Her daughter is actually the daughter of
Dina.
Who's really the daughter of Dinah, right? Just was raised in the house of
one
Potiphar.
midrash, yeah.
But regarding the cake,
Yes, back to the cake.
As I was saying.
if you think you're going to wait till you no longer feel like the cake till you start your diet, you're going to be waiting a long time.
Right.
Talking about acknowledging the fact that it's a reality that has.
There's
to
a
be
famous
felt.
line. It's the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he did not exist.
Right.
So it's like as long as he's very happy. As long as we live our lives like denying his presence, he's very happy. Because then you can't fight somebody that's not there, right? So we just fall prey.
So, but Yosef basically gained all his self-control skills from learning Torah. For the
Right.
Best, for
Right.
The, whatever.
That's what I think. I mean,
So that's how he gained that thing. Because this is
that's
this
my
is a
impression.
gold standard of self-control.
Right.
That's
I
what we draw upon.
never. I mean,
Now, eventually, it has a happy ending. It's very interesting. Eventually, it has a happy ending. He meets. How does it have a happy ending? Also very interesting. Is he's in jail and the royal cupbearer and the royal baker. They come to jail and he interprets their dreams, and one of them is given back his position, and eventually has a good word for Yosef, and Yosef gets promoted in an instant to second in command in Egypt. And the brothers come down and so on and so forth. It all has a happy ending. What's interesting is, what we never find out is, we know Yaakov eventually, after 22 years of being separated from his son, Yaakov eventually finds out that his son is really alive. He was never eaten by wolves. And he's well, and he's second in command in Mitzrayim. He's the viceroy. What's not clear from the verses, did Yaakov ever find out what the real story was? I mean, this whole story in Parshas Vayeishev, that the brothers hated Yosef and they sold him, and he was... Does Yaakov ever get clued into that story?
He must have seen that the dreams that were predicted, that Yosef prophesied in the beginning. Remember, it says that Yaakov kept it in mind.
Yes. Aviv Shamar
So
Sadavar.
then when he saw that these things started to show up in this way, I think he had enough Ruach HaKodesh to realize that this is Hashem.
How it was going to play. Well, okay.
Oh, but the question is, did he find out?
Did he find out that the brothers sold
right.
Yosef? That's the question.
There's no confrontation with his children.
So
And
there is a Ramban. There's a comment of Nachmanides
Also,
later in Bereshis.
Also, Rashi in Parsha Vayeishev says he did find out.
Right, Rashi says he did find out, but the Ramban has an approach to understand the verse that he never found out. He never knew. The brothers certainly didn't want to tell him, because the brothers were afraid of what he would.
But they
You
took
could
oath
curse them?
not to tell.
They were so they certainly were
No,
telling
but
Yosef,
after
and Yosef
they
didn't tell
told
either.
Yosef he was still alive.
Out of respect for his
that
brothers.
they revoked the cherem.
But that's
What?
amongst themselves, right?
No, they revoked the cherem. They put on anyone who would tell Yaakov that Yosef was still alive. So then they were allowed to tell him. Yosef was allowed to tell him.
Well, that may mean
You know, on Parsha Vayeishev, on the
Now,
pasuk,
what's amazing is right.
yeah.
Are you on the same page as me?
Yehuda, Gur-
287. If you look at 287,
Yehuda, it said
all the way to
Yehuda
Vayehi.
Gur Arya Yehuda mitzvah b'nei
I think where
Elisa.
Yonah.
Rashi says, "Miteref mimasha chasha deticha betoraf Yosef chayra al chalathu vezehu Yehuda shemshala Arye b'nei Elisa." So let's asmecha be'amarta ma betze.
Yeah, right, okay.
So that means that he knew what
right,
happened.
Right. Rashi says he knew.
Yeah.
Ramban says he didn't know. What's interesting is, if you look at the very, very end of Sefer Bereshis, so this really overlaps a few different parshas. It says this is all the way on page 287, all the way in the Parsha Vayeishev. This is after Yaakov died,
Right.
never having found out what happened to Yosef, only finding out that he survived. It says over here, verse 15, Joseph's brothers perceived that their father was dead, and they said, perhaps Yosef will nurse hatred against us, and he will surely repay us all the evil that we did him. So they instructed Yosef to be told, your father gave orders before his death, saying, Thus shall you say to Yosef, oh, please kindly forgive the spiteful deed of your brothers, and their sin, for they have done you evil. So now please forgive the spiteful deed of the servants of your father's God.
that's a crazy thing.
So it says they made up the story. First of all, it wasn't true.
Right.
Oh.
They made up a story. The brothers made up a story. Yaakov, they said, they come to Yosef.
Oh, okay.
And they say, Yosef, Yaakov told us before he died that you have to forgive us for selling you. They were scared. Okay, Yaakov's gone. Now Yosef's gonna have at us. He's gonna take it all out on us.
Why didn't Yaakov then say that directly to Yosef?
Oh, actually, the Mefarshim asked that question, and
That's a good question.
the art scroll actually says why.
Classic art scroll type of a question, yes.
Yeah, where is it?
But all of that, the point
It
is, how
says-
the whole story makes no sense. If you assume that Yaakov never had any inkling that the brothers sold it,
Yeah, it
he
says
never
that.
found out. So their whole story they're making up, which again never happened, but it makes no sense. How could Yaakov have told the brothers before he died?
Right.
Please tell Yosef that he should forgive you guys.
No, so they were saying to him,
Completely
we
implausible.
told your father we sold Yosef, you sold you as a slave, and he told us for
So
that
maybe
to
that was
forgive
part
you.
of the story.
Yeah, right.
But that was very hard to believe. They would have been the ones to tell him. That's hard to believe.
Okay.
Why would they have been the ones to tell him? So this is a question I saw raised by one of the Mefarshim, and he did not give an answer. How could it be? How could they make up the story? It's a completely nonsensical story.
It says
Why?
here,
Why?
but the savior
Because
state
if
one may
they're-
alter the truth for the sake of peace.
That's okay, but you want to lie, fine, but at least come up with a believable lie.
Oh,
Absolutely. But
It's an-
why is it nonsensical?
It's nonsensical because again, the brothers certainly never told Yaakov what they did.
Right.
Their fear of
Sure.
and Yosef never told them, according to Nachmanides, according to the Ramban. So that means Yaakov had no inkling of what happened. He didn't know that. For all he knew, he sent Yosef out to look for his brothers.
Right.
He tripped. Some slave traders got a hold of him, and that was the rest of the story. So who says the brothers ever did anything to him?
Right.
So that was the
So
that was the
basically-
question over here.
Yaakov had doubts from the very get-go because of the nature of the.
Yeah.
of the-
Rashi
he always-
says
he always
that
had a-
that he
there's no
thought
way.
he suspected his sons of having killed Yosef.
Uh-huh.
I think, doesn't Yosef answer the question?
Yosef?
Yeah, he said, whatever, don't bother making up stories, don't bother with any of it, because it's all
Meant to be.
insignificant compared to Hashem's plan. Why would I care what circumstances
Well, maybe
came
they.
together to make everything happen? Hashem made everything happen, so everything beyond that is kind of
No, so
not that important.
maybe they thought that Yosef was only saying that when Yaakov was still alive. Now that he died, he might not feel that way anymore.
Right, but he did. But he reassures them.
Oh,
That's
but they were scared. They were scared
Right,
he was
that's
going to.
understandable that they would be scared. Sure.
Right.
But at the same time, we have to put them in the perspective of that these are the heads of all the tribes, so that their behavior, as crazy as it seems, has to be the right thing here. Otherwise, they wouldn't be the tzaddikim that we hold them to be. So what's the good thing about this?
About the sale itself?
No, about them
Making up the story?
lying to
No, because they want to preserve peace. I mean,
Yeah,
their
and-
justification was they wanted to preserve peace between Yosef and themselves.
And it
Why?
says, one may
Why?
alter the truth in
Or-
sake of peace.
I think
Right,
that-
but they felt okay. You're right. It was to their own advantage, but they felt it was to preserve peace.
Seems like a certain amount of admission of guilt at the same time. That they're
Well, yeah, they did tshuva. No, they certainly felt guilt. They certainly
Yeah,
felt
earlier
guilt.
they said that this is happening to us because we.
Yeah, they acknowledge, right, that the whole
Right.
incident of being framed
Right.
for theft and the whole thing that happened to them because they sold Yosef. No, they definitely acknowledge guilt. They definitely acknowledge guilt. Okay, so just to summarize over here, maybe we'll say one more thing. So we talked about a few different questions over here. Number one is, who exactly sold Yosef down to Potiphar? Was it the Midyanim? Was it the Arabs? So perhaps we suggested an idea that it was really both.
There's midrashim that says it gets sold back and forth a dozen
Yes,
times.
yeah, and maybe
But
it was
why
really
is it
both.
so important?
Why is it so important? No, you have to. It's important to be able to read the Chumash in a sensical way. I mean, the Chumash in one place says the Midyanim sold him to Potiphar, and in one place it sold the Ishmaelim.
Doesn't make mistakes.
So yeah, right,
So,
certainly not making mistakes. Number two, we talked about Yosef's temptation with Mrs. Potiphar, how he distanced himself at all possible. He didn't talk about her and himself in the same sentence. He wouldn't even say anything to her promiscuous. He refused her before he ever explained to her why it was wrong. He just flat out refused her. And that he drew upon, first of all the Torah that he learned with Yaakov, and that he drew upon his future status as one of the 12 tribes of Yisrael to keep him away from the sin, which is true. So we all have that same. We all have those same tools in our toolbox to draw upon. First of all, our future status. We all have future status. Anybody that's married, had children, who we are is going to be, carried over to our children and our grandchildren, and we certainly don't want to be thought of as a lowlife. And to distance ourselves as much as possible from sinners, not to be in the same crowd, and to refuse, not to get involved and not to get bogged down with arguments and back and forth, just to flat out refuse and then worry about the arguments later. And also we talked about acknowledging temptation to sin, not to deny the temptation, that it's not there. That's why people got, that was part of the reason I felt like, people got upset at Mike Pence. It's like, they deny the, what do you need that for? Like there's no, it's like beneath them to admit that there is a temptation
What did
there.
they get upset about Mark Pence?
Because he said about how he wouldn't have, he said he basically distanced himself from other women.
Oh.
Other than his wife. He won't drink around other women, he won't have dinner with another woman. They feel like that's beneath them to even admit that there's such a temptation. So, and that's why they fail.
Exactly.
And the last thing we talked about was whether did Yaakov ever learn Parshas Vayeishev? Did he ever find about the whole story that happened in Parshas Vayeishev or not? And we suggested that he didn't, we suggested, the Ramban says he didn't. And the end of Parshas Vayechi, when you get there, will become very perplexing, and maybe you can work something out. We have a few minutes. We'll just go back to the beginning of the Parsha now that we have some time. Go back to the beginning of the Parsha of Vayeishev. Very interesting point that you see in the dreams. I never realized till last year. It took me about 20 years to figure out. This is a very distinct difference between the two dreams. In the beginning of the Parsha, Yosef has these two dreams. One involving bundles of wheat, bowing down to bundles of wheat, and one involving the stars and the sun and the moon. What's very interesting is to note is, in the second dream, the dream of the stars, so it says very clearly that Yosef had a dream, the sun and the moon were in the dream, and there was 11 stars in the dream, and the 11 stars were bowing down to Yosef's star. How stars bow down, not really sure.
Or the sun or the moon.
Or the sun or the moon, right? How they bow down, not really sure. But it's clear that Yosef's not in the dream. Yosef doesn't make any cameo
It is.
appearance in that dream.
Li
Li means what?
To me.
It doesn't mean to his star.
No.
There was
He left us
stars bowing down to a
me.
person?
Yeah, that's what he says. Behold, the sun, the moon, and stars were bowing down to me. That means he was in the dream.
Hold on a second. What
What do you have, the sun and the moon and
11 stars.
11 stars, the sun and the moon.
So why wouldn't, if there's...
But it's clear that the brothers are not there. The
Right.
brothers are not in the dream, and Yaakov's not in the dream, and Bilhah's not in the dream. But in the first dream, it's all symbolic. It's all symbolic. But in the first dream,
The dreams also.
Yosef and
In
his
the
brothers
first
are there.
dream, it's not true.
Yes,
In
it
the
is.
first dream,
Your
they're
sheaves
there.
better
They
than
are
my
there.
sheaves.
It says no, but that's the thing. You always think they're not there.
No, they are.
It says, but they are.
We were binding sheaves in
They
the middle
are.
of the field.
What?
It says, okay, it says if you look at verse 7. Hold on, slow. Behold, we were binding
Right.
sheaves in the middle of the field.
Okay.
'Cause the one word there you have to notice. We were binding sheaves in the middle of the field, which means they were there.
Right.
And Yosef was there. And my sheaf arose and remained standing, and your sheaves gathered around and bowed down to my sheaf. So what's strange is, I found very strange, is if they're, that means the brothers are all there in the
Yeah.
dream. And Yosef's there in the dream. Okay, so they're gathering up bundles of wheat. Fine. So if I want to send a message, if I'm Hashem, and you want to send a message, Hashem wants to send a message to Yosef, the brothers are going to bow down to you. The brothers are standing there, Yosef's standing there. And the bundles bow down to his bundle. Why not just have the brothers bow down to Yosef? What's the significance of the bundles bowing? They're all there. I understand the second dream. The brothers are not in the dream. There's just stars in the dream. So the stars bow down to him or his star, whatever it is.
Because it's not about the brothers themselves bowing down in subordinate.
What was the bundles? Why was it bundles? We'll ask a more simple question. What was significant? Why were there bundles in the dream? What are the bundles doing there at all? Forget the fact that, I also think it's peculiar that the brothers were in the dream and they didn't bow down. But what is significant about the bundles?
It's symbolic again.
What is symbolic of what?
It's symbolic.
Of
Stars
harvest,
I understand.
of,
because stars, the Jewish people
agriculture.
are like stars. What does agriculture do
There's
with
the
anything?
7 years of abundance.
So that's the Pasha Pshat. The simple Pshat is because why did they bow down to Yosef? Ultimately, for the food.
Because of food,
Yeah.
yeah.
Because of food. Because he had all the food. So
Right,
the
7 years.
bundles of wheat represented the fact that their bowing down to him would have something to do with food. So that's I think the most simple, straightforward Pshat
Yeah.
of why the dream involved sheaves. But I think we grow up for years and years, we never think about the fact why was it sheaves? And were the brothers in the dream, were they not in the dream? But these things, when you go through the psukim carefully, you pick these things up.
So the question is, why in the first dream they bow down to his sheaf and not to him, and then why in the second dream they bow down to him and not to his star?
Well, the second dream, it's not the first. The question was, really, in the first dream, if they're there, so why didn't they bow down to him? Why
did
the
they-
sheaves?
Or why did the sheaf bow down to his sheaf and not to himself? You can also ask that.
Okay, so let's see if we can pull one more out of here because we don't have a minion yet. So I'm not sure if we'll.
I'm not going to stay.
You can't stay.
I already
But I'm
davened.
not going to.
Wow.
And learn a lesson right there.
I've davened already. And
Me too.
What if there were 10 people?
What if there were 10 people? Did you daven, Zadie?
I've davened.
Yeah, you have
Yeah,
davened.
But I would stay.
I would say too.
Well, it's easy to say. You would say.
No, I think it's like.
Oh, famous vart. We'll do one last vart over here. What is Ruvain's plan? Ruvain comes in. The brothers were planning to kill him. The first plan was, let's go kill him, and we'll throw him into a pit, but not alive, dead.
Right.
The first plan is we're going to just kill him outright in cold blood. L'chuv and Argeyu, that's verse 20 on page 203. First plan is let's go kill him and we'll throw him into a boar dead. And we'll just say a wild animal ate him. Ruvain comes in and says, no, let's not kill him in cold blood. Let's throw him into a pit, and the pit has what in it? Snakes and scorpions.
And no water.
So what's the difference? The Orach Chaim, a famous Orach Chaim over here. Yes, what's the difference between killing someone in cold blood with a shotgun or with a knife or with a machete and throwing them into a pit full of snakes and
No,
scorpions?
because they didn't do it. Kind of.
So
Their hands
but,
are-
but Ki'ilu, right? Ki'ilu, they're going to say, doesn't sound like a great argument. Oh, well, we didn't do it. Indirect.
Yes.
But it's pretty, but it's as good. He's as good as dead. If two witnesses see somebody fall into a pit full of snakes and scorpions, they're allowed to walk away and tell his wife, "You're free to get married." That's the halacha. He's as good as dead. So what was going on?
So could be they.
So there's a famous Orach Chaim. Famous Orach Chaim. Very. You could talk. I can't talk, but some people could talk for hours about this. Is that what he said was like this? He said, "We think Yosef's a guilty man. We think Yosef is trying to get rid of us. We think he's guilty. We think he deserves death."
Brothers.
The brothers feel that way. The brothers feel like he deserves what's coming to him. Their ruling was he's chayiv misa. He says, okay, but listen, if we do it, we don't know that we're right. We don't know he does. If we kill him with our own hands, we don't know that he deserves to die.
That's not a decision.
But if we throw him into the pit and the scorpions kill him, we do know why. What's the difference? Right, because if
So they were right.
a person, he says that if a person's destined to die, If a person is destined to die, then he can die through natural means. A person who's not destined to die cannot die through natural means. A person who's not destined to die, a person who Hashem does not feel he deserves to die, cannot die through natural means, but he could die at the hands of another person. Why?
Yeah, I heard.
Because a person has free will.
Right.
Right.
There's a basic question: how, if I have free will, on the one hand we feel like our fate is completely Hashem is in control of our fate.
Right.
We believe Hashem controls everything that happens to us. But we also believe that we have free will.
Right.
So that's a contradiction. If I have free will, that means I have a choice. I could yes kill the person. I could yes kill my neighbor. I could not kill my neighbor. I have that free choice.
Right.
But on the other hand, we also believe that Hashem determines how long my neighbor is going to live.
Correct.
Right? Hashem determined my neighbor is going to live till 97. But when he's 77, I decide I want to take him out. I have free will. So can I do it? I can't do it. So the Orach Chaim says, yes, it's true that Hashem dictates people's fate, but free choice can override fate to a certain extent. To a certain extent. Not obviously can't completely override,
Your
but
own
to a
fate
certain
or-
extent, your free will can override someone else's fate. So Reuven said, if we kill him with our own hands, it doesn't prove that he was a guilty man, because maybe our free will is overriding his fate. If we throw him into the pit, even though in the pit he's as good as dead, but he'll be dying through natural means. He'll be dying in the hands of an animal. An animal doesn't have free will.
Correct.
So the animal kills him, it could only be because Hashem declared he should die.
But
Correct.
they declared him worthy of death because they really believed that he was
A threat.
He was a threat to them, and he was trying to get rid of them, and he was a rodef, and he was a pursuer. But the point is, they wanted proof
So
that
maybe
they were
that's
right.
what- But I just want to say
They wanted to take him out in a way that would prove they were right.
But this could be why they never ever told Yaakov, because although they came to see that they made the wrong decision, they
Right.
came back out of the fact that they
Felt he was
they did it based on their belief. So now, I mean,
but
when
they
found-
obviously
when
let
they
go
found-
of that belief.
When they found out, they saw that it was the hand of Hashem that they made the wrong decision. It didn't, the way it worked out. So now, I think that means that they probably did not go and tell Yaakov.
I see it gets slim now. Oh, that's okay. Okay. You think that would be an indication they didn't tell? Okay.